brought up that women are explicitly commanded to be silent in church, and they brought up the verse 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verses 34 and 35. Pronouncements of women's silence are just cultural statements from Paul. The Apostle Paul also said that you should take wine for your stomach if you have a stomachache. Are you following that one? Paul says that women should have their heads covered in worship. Do you? Does your mom come to church wearing a head covering? Why not? Because it's a culturally based principle. That's the same reason he says women should be silent. When Paul wrote his first epistles to the Corinthians and Timothy, the culture in which he was writing viewed women as less important and subservient to men. Women had no political rights and were viewed as subject to the power of their fathers and husbands. When placed in this cultural context, it is of no wonder that women could not speak in church and were to ask their husbands at home. Yes, the Bible talks about women not preaching, but it also talks about a lot of other cultural practices that we don't follow. Why is this one any different? Secondly, you say that women cannot be preachers. You seem to misunderstand what preaching actually is. I brought up the Greek lexicon euangelizo, which means preaching in Greek. And as we have already mentioned, the very Greek word used for preaching just means to proclaim the good news. The Bible records that both Mary Magdalene and Priscilla did this, among others. That means the Bible shows clear examples of female preachers. Women are not only capable of being preachers, they can be preachers, heralds of the good news. Today we have shown that the Bible applies gender equity in regard to men and women. Galatians chapter 3, verse 28 makes that clear. Additionally, we show that Paul's culture influenced his writing on numerous occasions, and unless you are willing to cover your heads and take some wine for your stomach issues, you cannot justify the silence of women. Furthermore, silence prohibits women from fulfilling the biblical command to use their gifts. If all of this is not enough, we have shown you several examples of women engaged in biblical preaching. In light of this overwhelming evidence, we respectfully ask for you to return a ballot in favor of the negative position.
Unlike the negative team, we aren't making statements based on our feelings. We are using the Bible. In a biblical debate such as this one, we must only go by what the Bible says, not by what Greek lexicons say. We have proved that women preaching is not a cultural thing already in our second affirmative speech. Also, the negative team claims to be more knowledgeable on this subject than the inspired writer Paul, who made it very clear women do not have a place of authority to preach.